What's up, space pirates? This is your Admiral, the Dread Pirate Dr. Disaster, and these days, with all the drama surrounding the company, it always ends up being amusing to check in on Ubisoft and see how those poor devils are doing.
Hey, how you doing?
I've slipped into the seventh circle of hell. Thank you.
There's been no shortage of controversy with Ubisoft over the past year. Skull and Bones was an embarrassing black eye after Ubisoft bragged that it was the first quadruple A game. X-Defiant was a massive flop, and of course, we've talked seemingly incessantly about the issues with Assassin's Creed Shadows, but arguably the biggest failure of the past year for this beleaguered company was Star Wars Outlaws, the game which featured the queen of ugly cat ladies as the protagonist that most gamers couldn't be bothered to play as.
She ugly. U-G-L-Y. She ain't got no alibi. She ugly.
I mean, the thing is, the Ubisoft stock value really started to plummet after this game released and the sales were revealed as being very disappointing. But now, we are learning more information as to just how legendarily bad those sales numbers are for Star Wars Outlaws. It looks as though the game has been outsold by Jedi Survivor, another Star Wars game that was over a full year older than Outlaws.
I'm so embarrassed. I wish everybody else was dead.
You have to remember, Outlaws came out right around the time that Star Wars The Acolyte was released, and it was fair to wonder at that time what it was that made Star Wars Outlaws so unappealing. On the one hand, Star Wars is radioactive to most people who are checking out of the franchise in big ways. But on the other hand, this game was made by a studio that basically told gamers that they hate them when they said that you have to get comfortable not owning their games. This was a legit question between two heavyweight losers. What is more unappealing, Star Wars or Ubisoft? But now that we can see that Star Wars Outlaws was outsold by an older Star Wars property, I think Ubisoft can safely throw its arms up into the air and not so triumphantly shout,
I'm the champion of failure.
But alrighty then, let's discuss the dominating failure that was Star Wars Outlaws and how embarrassed Ubisoft must be right about now. I remember back in July when the CEO of Ubisoft tried desperately to reassure investors that the terrible reception to the gameplay videos being released at the time were just a bump in the road and that everything was going to be fixed, everything was going to be swell with Star Wars Outlaws. I got the sense then, and I still get the sense now, that one of the biggest reasons the game looks so unpolished when it released is because the bean counters at this large corporate entity at Ubisoft chose a very specific date for the release of Outlaws, and it wasn't enough time for the developers to fix the game up properly. The final days of August are often a prime spot for major game releases, with college kids going back to school and the weather starting to cool down, prompting people to go inside more often and play video games. So Ubisoft wanted that prime real estate for the release, but they also wanted to time their release of Outlaws to draft off of what they assumed would be major buzz following Star Wars The Acolyte. But bean counters don't know their heads from their asses, and the game was an ugly mess that rightly got its ass kicked, and there was no buzz from Star Wars The Acolyte to help the game out. This article here from Game Rant breaks it down for us in more bad news for Star Wars Outlaws. Ubisoft's open world title is reportedly being outsold by 2023's Star Wars Jedi Survivor, while early reviews for Star Wars Outlaws were largely positive when it launched last August. Players have been less than thrilled about the game's combat and stealth mechanics. Yeah, it's funny how that works, isn't it? It's almost as if these access media clowns are just de facto in the bag for these AAA slop peddlers like Ubisoft, and they are completely out of touch with gamers who hate shit like Star Wars Outlaws. If I were Game Rant, I definitely would have left this self-indicting tidbit out of the article. But anyhow, the article continues. Ubisoft would take note of those issues in later updates, but this sadly didn't do much to placate those who disliked Star Wars Outlaws in the beginning. This has resulted in poor financial sales for the first truly open-world Star Wars title, with Ubisoft itself admitting that the game ultimately fell short of its sales expectations back in September. Ubisoft stocks sharply dropped not too long after Star Wars Outlaws launched on August 27th, fueling growing concerns about the publisher and triggering talks about taking the company private. Nonetheless, Ubisoft and developer Massive Entertainment have stayed optimistic that Star Wars Outlaws can bounce back thanks to its planned post-launch DLC. And the only people who actually believe that have huffed entirely too much glue, and I really think it's about time we cut them off. Because I'll tell you right now, the people who were willing to give this game a chance, who were willing to look past all the bugs, and the fact that Ubisoft is now synonymous with terrible games, and those people who are still interested in having anything to do with the Star Wars franchise, those people have all been tapped out. I mean, look at the Steam chart for this game. We covered this back in November when the game first dropped on Steam, but they couldn't even break 2,500 concurrent players, and the Gamealytic estimate is that they've sold only around 60,000 copies on Steam. This is terrible. But let's read a bit more of the article here. Look at that little graphic there, though, where it says that Game Rant really hopes the Star Wars Outlaws brand won't face the Reaper. They just can't help themselves. Anytime these idiots have a chance to shill for their corporate masters, they sure take the opportunity, don't they? But anyhow, the article continues on. Another blow to their hope recently came in the form of a report by VGC and former GamesIndustry.biz journalist Christopher Dring, who revealed that Star Wars Outlaws is not only underperforming overall, but is being outsold by 2023's Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Respawn Entertainment's single-player action sequel managed to sell more copies than Star Wars Outlaws, although no exact stats have been shared. Now, just to give you some kind of an idea as to how badly Star Wars Outlaws got its ass handed to it, here are the Steam numbers for Jedi Survivor. Over 60,000 concurrent players at its peak, and Gamealytic gives us an estimate of around 1.7 million copies sold on the Steam platform. There is really no comparison. I do think that Star Wars as a brand is at a low point right now, but the fact that more people found this design here from Jedi Survivor more interesting than Star Wars Outlaws, even though that first design is well over a year old, that should tell you everything you need to know about Ubisoft and how the sort of games that they churn out are being largely rejected. And now, I sure as hell wouldn't want to give any investment advice to anyone, but I will at least say this: keep all of this information in mind, that Ubisoft appears to be less popular than the Star Wars brand when making investment decisions about whether or not to put money into that company. But I'm going to leave it there. As I so often ask you to do, drop your mockery of Ubisoft into the comment section below, and we will talk there. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your Admiral is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.